Dinner at my house had always been noisy. 3 kids with different appetites, everyone talking over one another, and me trying to get a few bites down before someone spilled milk. That night was no different until Jennifer dropped her fork against the plate and said the words that turned my stomach colder than the meatloaf. "I've decided to carry a baby for Emily." No build-up, no conversation before this. Just an announcement made like she was telling me she'd finally signed us up for cable. Emily, her identical twin, sitting over in her own house with her husband, apparently couldn't manage it herself. Jennifer, my wife, the mother of my 3 children, had taken it upon herself to fix the problem. I stared at her, the mashed potatoes stuck to my fork going limp. "What?" She repeated it slower, like I was deaf or maybe stupid. "I'm going to be a surrogate for Emily. It's what family does." The kids froze. Madison, my oldest, set her glass down too carefully. The twins, Ben and Charlie, just kept chewing but glanced at me like they could already sense trouble. I kept my voice low. "And when were you planning on talking to me about this?" Jennifer shrugged, the kind of casual shoulder lift that said she'd already decided and my input was a formality she wasn't interested in. "I'm telling you now, this isn't up for debate, Michael. It's already in motion." Her words landed like a steel door slamming shut. Not up for debate. I wasn't her husband in this. I was a bystander she had to inform, like a landlord being told about a paint job. "You're asking me to raise a 4th kid that isn't even ours?" "I'm not asking," she snapped, her voice sharp but calm enough for the kids' ears. "Emily and Daniel will raise the baby. I'm just carrying it. Don't make this bigger than it is. Don't make this bigger than it is." My wife's body, my insurance, my name tied to every form, every bill, every sideways look from neighbors. And I was supposed to sit quietly and smile? I pushed back from the table, the chair legs scraping the tile louder than I meant. "You blindsided me. You don't get to call this small." Jennifer crossed her arms, her face tightening into the stubborn look I knew too well. "It's my body, my choice, and it's the right thing to do." The kids sat in silence, forks paused halfway to their mouths. The clink of the fridge kicking on was louder than the air between us. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. But inside, something shifted. A line had been crossed, not with screaming or betrayal of the flesh, but with her cool certainty that my role as husband didn't matter. She'd erased me from the equation with one sentence. I stood, took my plate to the sink, and dumped the food I hadn't touched. My appetite was gone. "Enjoy your dinner," I said quietly, and walked out of the kitchen. Behind me, the silence stretched long. It wasn't the sound of a family eating together anymore. It was the sound of a fracture, sharp and spreading. If anyone drove by our house, they'd see a picture of stability. Porch light on at dusk, lawn trimmed on weekends, kids catching the bus at 7:15 sharp. From the outside, we looked like every other family on the block. But inside, the air carried a tension you could taste. Jennifer and I shared the same roof, the same utilities, the same 3 kids, but not the same marriage. She moved through the house with a kind of self-importance, prenatal vitamins lined up next to the coffee maker like little trophies. Fertility appointment cards slipped between cookbook pages as if hiding them made them less insulting. And yet, my name, Michael Carter, was on the insurance paperwork she filed, the legal shield she used to push this thing forward. Every morning I saw those pills by the coffee pot, and every morning it felt like a reminder that my say didn't matter. She called it selfless. She called it sacrifice. What I saw was erasure, me being reduced to a background prop in a story I never agreed to. At the dinner table, our conversations shrank down to logistics. Who was driving the kids to soccer? Who was paying the heating bill? Whispers after the kids went to bed turned into arguments where both of us leaned low across the table. Hissing words neither of us wanted the kids to hear. One night she leaned forward, her jaw clenched, whispering like the walls themselves might tattle. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I kept my voice steady. "You decided without me. That's not marriage. That's a dictatorship." Her lips curled in disgust. "You think everything has to go through you. Not everything is about you, Michael. Sometimes people do the right thing, even when others don't approve." I sat back, folding my arms. Respect isn't optional in marriage. Without it, there's no love, just performance. She didn't like that word, performance. But it was the truth. We acted like a couple in front of the kids, but behind closed doors, we were actors in a play neither of us enjoyed. The kids picked up on it, of course. Madison lingered in her room more. Ben and Charlie asked if we were fighting. I told them the truth in the simplest words I could. Mom and Dad don't agree right now. In the silence of the house, I felt the weight of responsibility pressing harder. Mortgage payments, school costs, gas in the tank. She was the one making sacrifices, but I was still the one carrying the load. And she expected me to keep carrying it while she played hero for her sister. That quiet war stretched through every hallway and every late-night kitchen standoff. And the truth kept grinding down on me like grit in a gear. A man can shoulder a lot, but he cannot shoulder being erased. My garage had always been my retreat. Smelled like motor oil, dust, and old wood, comforting smells, steady smells. Out there, I could sand down a piece of pine, swap out a brake pad, or just sit on a stool with a beer and listen to the radio without anyone telling me who I should be. It was the one place Jennifer's decisions couldn't reach. At least that's what I thought. We were sorting through boxes for a yard sale one Saturday when she came storming out, arms folded tight, her shadow cutting across the concrete. "You didn't schedule the OB appointment on the calendar," she said, her voice sharp. I kept digging through an old box of tools, not even looking up. "That's because I'm not going." Her tone climbed. "You're supposed to drive me. You think I can handle this alone with everything else going on? You're my husband. You're supposed to support me." That word, support, it scraped across my nerves like a file on metal. Support meant stand behind her, nod along, carry the load, while being written out of the story. I finally looked at her, grease on my hands, dirt on my jeans. "I can't support something I was cut out of. I'm not your chauffeur. I'm not your bystander. I'm your husband, or I'm nothing. You already chose which." Her face tightened, lips white at the edges. "Don't make me the villain here. I'm doing this for Emily, for the family. You could make this easier if you just fall in line." I snapped, my voice low but hard. "That's what you want. You want me to smile for the neighbors, nod at the right times, and pretend I had a say. I didn't. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." For a second, she didn't know what I meant. Then I wiped my hands on a rag, walked to the workbench, and pulled open the drawer where I tucked the folder my lawyer gave me months ago, back when cracks first showed in our marriage. I hadn't wanted to think about it then. Now it felt like the only tool left in the box. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table filling out the paperwork for legal separation. In our state, it wasn't immediate. The law demanded a year of cooling off before divorce, a year of living in limbo. But I wasn't waiting for her approval. Jennifer came into the room, saw the papers, and froze. "You can't be serious." I kept my pen moving. "Dead serious. You'd rather tear this family apart than stand by me?" I set the pen down, looked her straight in the eyes. "No, you already tore it apart. I'm just refusing to play along." Her eyes brimmed with a wetness and she tried to blink away. For a second, I saw the girl I married, the one who used to lean against me at drive-in movies and laugh at dumb jokes. But that girl was gone. This woman in front of me didn't want a husband. She wanted an accessory. I signed the last line and closed the folder. The sound of the papers snapping shut was quieter than a slammed door, but it carried more weight. Jennifer's voice cracked. "You'll regret this." I stood, walked past her toward the garage door, and flicked off the kitchen light. "No, what I regret is letting it get this far." In the garage, I sat down on my stool, the old radio humming low. For the first time in weeks, I felt clarity. It didn't feel like rage or despair. It felt like standing up straight after carrying too much weight for too long. The separation papers weren't the end. They were the line in the sand. And I wasn't crossing back. The fridge used to be a family bulletin board, kids' drawings, game schedules, report cards pinned up with magnets shaped like fruit. Now it was plastered with ultrasound photos that weren't mine to celebrate. Jennifer taped them up right between Madison's spelling test and Ben's soccer flyer, like I was supposed to stand there with my morning coffee and beam with pride. Every time I opened that fridge, I saw my erasure in black and white grainy images. A child that wasn't mine, a decision I never agreed to, staring back at me with its forming outline. The house buzzed with false cheer. Jennifer texted updates in the family group chat, and her sister Emily fired back emojis with too many hearts. My phone lit up with congratulations from cousins and neighbors who thought I was heartless for not tagging along to doctor visits. To them, I was the stubborn husband who wouldn't support his selfless wife. They didn't see the truth that my name was just ink on forms, my wallet a bank account for someone else's choices. One Saturday morning, Jennifer came into the kitchen holding a printout. "There's a heartbeat appointment Tuesday. You should come. It might help you. Accept this." I was under the sink, tightening a stubborn joint that had been dripping for weeks. My knuckles scraped metal, water trickled down my wrist, but the steady rhythm of the wrench against the pipe gave me more peace than her words ever could. Without crawling out, I said, "I'll be here fixing the leak." There was silence, then a sharp exhale. "Do you know how cruel you sound?" I slid out finally, greased my hands, looked her square in the eye. "Cruel is dragging me into something without consent and then expecting applause. Cruel is erasing me and calling it noble. I'm not going to play the husband in a role you rewrote." She shook her head, clutching the paper against her chest like a shield. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No," I said, standing. "You already made it hard. I'm just choosing not to lie about it." The kids hovered in the doorway, pretending to argue about cereal, but I could see their ears tuned to every word. That's when I realized me fixing that pipe wasn't just about plumbing. It was about showing them something solid in a house full of shifting stories. The neighbors smiled politely when Jennifer waddled past with prenatal vitamins rattling in her purse. Some even patted me on the back, told me how lucky Emily was to have a sister so generous, how lucky I was to have a wife so selfless. I smiled back the way you do when you know people aren't interested in the truth, only in the version that makes them feel warm inside. But inside, every handshake, every nod, felt like salt ground into the same wound. They didn't see the man who had been crossed out of his own marriage, who refused to clap for his own replacement. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, the ultrasound photos still staring from the fridge. I poured myself a drink, the bourbon burning its way down slowly, and said out loud into the empty room, "Not my child, not my responsibility, not my life." Hearing the words aloud steadied me, because if I didn't keep reminding myself, the world would keep trying to write me into a story where I had no place. The next morning, I went right back to the leaky pipe. Not because it needed another turn, but because fixing something I actually had control over was pretending to celebrate what I didn't. The knock on the door came Sunday afternoon, right when the kids were arguing over who got the last slice of pizza. I opened it to find Emily holding a pie like it was some kind of peace offering, Daniel standing behind her with that sheepish, apologetic grin I'd grown to despise. Jennifer lit up like Christmas morning, ushering them in. I stayed by the door, arms folded. Emily set the pie on the counter. "We just wanted to check in, see how you're both doing. This is a lot, I know." I leaned back against the wall. "You didn't come to check in. You came to smooth it over." Her smile faltered. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mike, I know this is unconventional, but it's family. We thought maybe." "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't call this family. Family doesn't erase each other. The family doesn't hand a man the bill and tell him to be grateful." Jennifer shot me a glare, but Emily pressed on. "We're not trying to erase you. This is about love. About sacrifice." I stepped closer, my voice low, calm, but sharp enough to cut. "No, this is about responsibility. You and Daniel wanted a baby. Fine. But you don't get to shove the cost, the weight, the fallout onto me and call it sacrifice. That's not noble. That's cowardice with a pretty bow on it." Daniel's ears went red. "I never asked you to." I laughed, short and bitter. "You didn't have to ask. You're standing in my kitchen with a pie, hoping I'll swallow my pride along with it. They left soon after, the pie still sitting on the counter. Nobody touched it. A week later, Daniel showed up alone. I was in the driveway changing the oil on the truck. He stood there awkwardly, hands shoved in his pockets. "Look," he said. "I know this has been rough. I was thinking maybe I could make it easier. I can cover some of the costs if you just—" "Just what?" I asked, sliding out from under the truck. "Just pitch in. Help out a little. Be there for Jen. It'd mean a lot." I wiped my hands on a rag, stepped close enough that he couldn't mistake my tone. "You want me to help? Fine. I'll show you how to install a car seat. I'll teach you how to check a diaper properly so you don't fumble it in the middle of the night. But beyond that, no, I'm not your stand-in father. I'm not her support system. You wanted this family. Step up and be the man for it." He swallowed, nodded like a kid caught doing something stupid, and walked back to his car. I went back under the truck, the wrench biting clean into the bolt. For the first time in a long while, the work felt steady in my hands. It happened on a Thursday night, the kind of evening that should have been ordinary. Kids' homework spread across the table, dinner dishes stacked in the sink, the dog curled by the back door. But the air was thick, heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Jennifer stood in the kitchen, a diaper bag slung over her shoulder, folding tiny onesies into a neat pile. Emily hovered nearby, rocking the baby carrier with her foot like she already owned the space. Daniel lingered in the doorway, his eyes flicking between me and the floor. My kids sat halfway up the stairs, silent sentries in pajamas, watching with wide eyes. They didn't ask questions anymore. They just waited, braced. Jennifer's voice cracked first. "I can't breathe here, Michael. Every day feels like walking on glass." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, steady as stone. "Then don't." Her hands froze on the stack of onesies. For a second, her eyes softened, like she wanted me to fight for her, to beg her to stay. But I wasn't that man anymore, and she knew it. Emily cleared her throat, stepping in like a backup singer. "This tension isn't good for anyone. It's time to make a change." I looked at her, then at Daniel, then back at Jennifer. "You've already made your change. I'm just not cleaning up after it." That's when the accusations started. Jennifer's voice rose, sharp and brittle. "You abandoned me. You turned your back on your vows." I pushed off the counter, standing tall, voice low but steady. "No, I stood by my vows. You're the one who rewrote them without asking. Don't twist this." Daniel shifted, opened his mouth, then thought better of it. Emily hissed something about cruelty, about me being heartless. I didn't bother arguing. You can't reason with people who've already rehearsed their lines. Jennifer's face broke into something raw, anger and sadness tangled together. She stuffed the onesies into the bag, slung it over her shoulder, and picked up the baby carrier. The click of the handle locking into place echoed like a gavel in the room. She whispered then, so soft I almost missed it. "Maybe one day you'll understand." I shook my head. "No, maybe one day you will." She walked past me without looking back. Emily followed, clutching the diaper bag, Daniel trailing behind like a shadow. The front door opened, the night air rushing in cold and sharp, then closed with a thud that seemed to drain the whole house of sound. On the stairs, Madison pulled her brothers close, whispering something I couldn't hear. Their small faces were pale in the dim light, eyes darting between me and the door that had just swallowed their mother. I climbed halfway up the stairs, crouched to their level. "It's okay," I told them, steady as I could. "We're going to be okay." They nodded, but their eyes stayed wide, the kind of look kids get when they realize the world doesn't work the way they thought it did. Later that night, when the house was quiet, I turned the lock on the front door. The sound was soft, almost nothing, but to me it was the loudest thing in the world. Not anger, not relief, not victory, just closure. The house was divided now, but at least the lines were clear. The courtroom smelled like old wood and stale coffee, the kind of place where lives get carved up with pens instead of fists. Jennifer sat at the opposite table, hair pulled back tight, eyes shining with practiced tears. Her lawyer leaned into the performance, painting me as a cold husband who abandoned his wife in her time of need. Words like neglect, abandonment, and failure to support got tossed around, as if my 3 kids hadn't eaten breakfast at my table every morning, as if their homework didn't get checked by my hand every night. I didn't flinch. I didn't need to. My lawyer slid folders across the table like ammunition, receipts, insurance forms, text messages, calendars all marked with appointments I never agreed to. The paper told the truth better than my mouth ever could. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, buttoned my jacket, and faced the judge. My voice was steady, no theatrics, no pleading. Your Honor, I'm here as a father of 3 children. I provide for them, I raise them, I love them. That is my responsibility. This? I gestured toward the stack of ultrasound photos Jennifer's lawyer had submitted, is not my child. Not by biology. Not by law. Not by choice. I will not be erased from my own children's lives by being forced into one that was written without me. Jennifer shifted in her seat, dabbing her eyes, trying to pull sympathy from the room. But the judge didn't look at her. The judge looked at the paper, at the facts, at the clean, undeniable record of a man who kept his duties straight while refusing to carry someone else's burden. Jennifer's lawyer tried to push again. Mr. Carter, don't you think your refusal has harmed your wife emotionally? I locked eyes with him. My refusal kept me honest. Her choices are what harmed this marriage, not my boundaries. The room went still for a moment. You could hear the clock tick behind the bench. The judge finally leaned forward, voice clipped. Custody of the 3 children remains with Mr. Carter. Financial and parental responsibility for the infant belongs solely to Emily and Daniel Thompson. The gavel hit wood. Done. Jennifer broke then, covering her face with her hands. Emily wrapped an arm around her. Daniel sat there stiff, jaw tight, knowing the weight was his to carry now. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just gathered my papers, stood, and walked out with my lawyer. On the courthouse steps, the sun hit my face, warm and steady. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. Not all of it. Life doesn't work like that. But enough. Enough to breathe without bracing. This wasn't a victory. This was clarity. And clarity was worth more than sympathy. The house felt different after the court papers were signed. Not bigger, not emptier, just steadier, like a foundation finally poured level after months of leaning. Saturday mornings turned into pancake mornings again. Madison manned the griddle, flipping half-burnt circles she called rustic. Ben and Charlie set the table, spilling syrup everywhere but laughing while they did it. The noise that once carried tension now carried life again. I walked past the fridge one day and tore down the last ultrasound photo. The magnet snapped against the metal, holding up one of Charlie's drawings instead. A stick-figure football game where Dad threw the winning pass. That was the only picture that belonged on that fridge. The baby gear that cluttered the living room, diaper bags, bassinets, stacks of onesies, got boxed up and hauled to the garage. I didn't throw it out. I labeled it plain and simple. Not ours. Then I shoved the box onto a shelf and left it there to collect dust. On the mantel, I replaced our wedding photo with a framed picture of the kids at the county fair. Faces smeared with cotton candy, hands clutching prizes. The wedding photo went into a storage bin I labeled past, not trash. Because that's what it was now, not garbage, but not something I needed in sight. Evenings turned quieter. Homework spread across the kitchen table. Football games humming on the TV. The dog asleep by the couch. No whispered arguments. No hidden appointment cards. Just the rhythm of a home that finally matched the people living in it. Sometimes, when I tucked the kids in, Madison would ask, "Are we okay now, Dad?" And I'd tell her the truth. We're better. Not perfect, but better. Because kids can smell lies, and I wasn't going to poison the peace we'd fought for with fake comfort. The nights felt different, too. I'd sit on the porch with a beer, the dog stretched out beside me, listening to the cicadas drone. The house behind me didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. Felt like shelter again. Peace didn't arrive with trumpets or fireworks. It came in small moments, the sound of laughter from upstairs, the clatter of dishes in the sink, the steady breath of kids asleep in their rooms. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't brace myself waiting for the next blow. I just let the quiet settle in. Jennifer came by a few times after the dust settled. She'd stand on the porch, eyes heavy, voice soft, like she wanted me to forget everything and let her drift back into the life she'd walked out of. I didn't slam the door on her, but I didn't open it wide either. When she asked for help, I gave her resources, not rescue. A phone number for a clinic, a list of community programs. Never money, never a seat back at my table. Kindness doesn't mean surrender, and I wasn't about to confuse the two. The kids watched how I handled it. That mattered more than anything. Madison learned that love doesn't mean letting someone walk over you. Ben and Charlie saw that a man can say no and still stand tall. I never had to give them speeches. I just lived it in front of them. One evening, I sat on the porch with the dog at my feet, the sun setting low and orange over the yard. I thought about my dad, how he used to tell me, just do the next right thing. Not the easy thing, not the popular thing. The right thing. That's all I'd done. Draw the line. Hold it. Paid the price without flinching. For the first time in a long while, I exhaled without bracing for impact. The house behind me was steady. My kids were safe. My dignity is intact. I was home.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.